What if I told you that in the mountains of New Mexico, three children once disappeared together, and when they were finally found, their explanation made the entire case even stranger. They said they had been chased by something. They said they were too afraid to answer the searchers. And they were discovered miles away, high in the mountains, in terrain that should have been extremely difficult for children to cross. But that is only the beginning. Because decades later, in the same general region, adults would begin vanishing too. A hunter, an artist, and a 71-year-old traveler, all disappearing in the first half of September, all in or near the Santa Fe National Forest, and all under circumstances that still leave more questions than answers. This chapter takes us into New Mexico, a place of high mountains, deep forests, isolated roads, cold weather, and wilderness that can look peaceful from a distance, but become unforgiving the moment something goes wrong. And as we move through these cases, pay attention to one repeated pattern. People disappear near known roads, trails, camps, or vehicles, but when search teams arrive, the evidence seems to lead nowhere. The first case begins on June 7, 1951, when two families from Santa Fe drove to the Santa Fe ski basin for a picnic. The area was beautiful, surrounded by trees, rocks, and mountain terrain. While the adults settled in, three children, Larry McGee, Janet McGee, and Stephen Cross, wandered off together. At first, no one panicked. Children playing nearby during a family outing is normal. But soon, the families realized the children were gone. They searched the area, called their names, and as the hours passed, concern turned into fear. Law enforcement was called, and the search expanded. That night, spotlights were aimed toward the mountain, hoping the children would see them and walk back. Hundreds of volunteers joined the search, but reports described the operation as disorganized, with searchers spreading into brush and rough terrain without a clear plan. Then, 28 hours after the children vanished, personnel more than 3 miles from the last known location saw a head appear among downed logs. It was one of the children. All three were found alive. They were in decent condition, only slightly dehydrated, but the location raised disturbing questions. They had traveled several miles through high-elevation terrain at altitudes around 11 to 12,000 feet. Their story was even stranger. The children reportedly said they had been chased up the mountain by a bear. One of them also claimed they had slept in a hollow log and sometimes drank water from a stream. But the author questions this explanation. If a bear wanted to chase children, why would it chase them for miles and then simply stop? Why didn't the children respond when searchers were nearby? And why did they say they were afraid to call out because they thought the searchers were big gorillas? That detail creates the first curiosity loop of the chapter. Were these children simply confused after a frightening experience, or did they encounter something that made them too terrified to ask for help? The next case moves forward to 1982 and the disappearance of Linda Riffin, and was 53 years old, an accomplished artist with a background in anthropology, and had recently been living in New Mexico. In September of that year, she left for what appeared to be a short weekend art trip, but when she failed to return, her family contacted authorities. Her vehicle was later found stuck in a ditch on a dirt road off Highway 3 between Tres Ritos and Mora. The vehicle was locked, and there did not appear to be signs of foul play. Investigators found her artwork, brushes, paint, and supplies, showing that, and had been painting landscapes during the trip. A witness claimed to have seen her getting gas at a station about 10 miles from where her car was abandoned, and that she was alone. But herself was never found. No body, no clear direction of travel, no final explanation. And what makes this case more unsettling is that her disappearance occurred in proximity to another case, Melvin Nadell, who vanished years later in the same broader region. Melvin Nadell disappeared in September of 2009 near Elk Mountain in the Santa Fe National Forest. Melvin was 61 years old, physically fit, and far from helpless. He owned and operated a Pilates and fitness studio, practiced martial arts, and was described by customers and family as strong, disciplined, and capable. He was also a bow hunter, which meant he understood stealth, patience, camouflage, and the outdoors. On September 6th, Melvin went into the forest with friends to hunt. He drove his Jeep into the area and told his companions he would walk down an adjacent trail and stay nearby. He had a slight knee injury and did not want to go long distances. He was carrying a camouflage bow with arrows and a .44 caliber pistol. Around 4:30 in the afternoon, he walked down the trail and never returned. His friends notified authorities, and a large search followed. Helicopters, dogs, horses, volunteers, and law enforcement teams searched the adjacent mountains. But they found no bow, no arrows, no gun, no clothing, no body, and no sign of Melvin. Then the weather changed. Snow fell shortly after his disappearance, adding another layer of difficulty. Here is where the case becomes especially disturbing. Tracking dogs were brought to the camp, and according to the chapter, they started directly down the trail Melvin said he would take. But around the 150-yard mark, the dogs stopped. The author argues that trained dogs do not usually stop without reason. A scent trail does not simply vanish unless something happens to interrupt it. So what happened 150 yards down that trail? Did Melvin turn around? Was he taken? Did he encounter someone or something he never expected? The official search was eventually called off after less than a week, which the author considered short for a man who was fit, armed, and capable of survival. A year later, Melvin's family pursued legal action to have him declared dead so they could settle important matters, but emotionally, the case remained wide open. The author explores several possibilities: mountain lion attack, exposure, becoming lost, or abduction. But each explanation has problems. If an animal attacked him, where was the blood, the clothing, the bones, or the torn equipment? If he became lost, why were none of his belongings found? If he left voluntarily, why would he abandon his family, business, weapons, and vehicle? And if he was abducted, who would take a man like Melvin, in that location, without leaving evidence? This becomes the second curiosity loop. If Melvin was only 150 yards down the trail when his scent stopped, what caused that trail to end? The final major case is Emma Frances Tresp, reported missing in 1998. Emma was 71 years old, but she was not the fragile type many people might imagine. She was a retired nursing home inspector, a world traveler, and a woman who had visited China, New Zealand, Canada, Alaska, and other places. She was independent, capable, and used to traveling alone. In late August of 1997, Emma left Oklahoma in her white Honda Civic and headed toward New Mexico for a religious visit to a Benedictine monastery near Pecos. She stopped at a filling station, asked for directions, and then apparently took a wrong turn into the mountains. Her car was later found on Forest Road 63, a near Glorieta Baldy Peak. The vehicle had become stuck on the edge of the road, and she could not move it. Inside the car, investigators found items like a blanket, unopened drinks, cookies, a hat, money, a travel map, clothing, and a thermos. The only item clearly missing appeared to be her purse. But Emma was gone. Search teams responded quickly, using helicopters, dogs, horses, and volunteers. At one point, hundreds of searchers were involved. Yet no tracks, no clothing, no remains, and no clear sign of Emma were ever found. Police later said they did not believe she was a victim of foul play, but they also could not explain where she went. The author challenges the idea that Emma simply wandered away. She was an experienced traveler. She knew roads. She knew how to follow a route. If she had become weak, sick, or injured, she should have been found near the road, near the car, or somewhere in the immediate area. But she was not found anywhere. Not in the mountains. Not along the road. Not near a trail. Not near the vehicle. Nothing. One investigator reportedly said it was as if she vanished off the face of the earth. And this is where the final loop closes, and Riffin, Melvin Nadell, and Emma Tresp all disappeared in the first half of September. All vanished in or near the Santa Fe National Forest. All were adults. All were in places connected to roads, trails, vehicles, or known routes. And all left behind scenes that did not give searchers enough evidence to explain what happened. The chapter summary points out that these 3 adult cases happened close enough in time of year and geography to feel unusual, especially because New Mexico has many national forests, but this cluster centers around the Santa Fe National Forest and the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. The author also notes an interesting shift when comparing New Mexico with Arizona. In Arizona, the earlier cases involved young boys. Then later cases shifted toward older adults. In New Mexico, something similar appears to happen. The profile moves away from children and toward adults disappearing under strange conditions. So what are we supposed to make of this? The logical explanations are still there. The children may have panicked and wandered, and may have gotten lost after painting. Melvin may have suffered an accident while hunting. Emma may have left her car and become disoriented. But when you look at the details together, the pattern becomes harder to ignore. Children travel miles through high mountains and claim they were too afraid to call for help. A hunter's scent trail stops suddenly after only 150 yards. A traveler's car is found stuck on a forest road, but she disappears without leaving clear tracks. An artist's vehicle is found abandoned after a quiet trip, and she is never seen again. Different people, different years, different circumstances, but the same uncomfortable ending. No complete answer. New Mexico's mountains are not as famous as Yosemite, Mount Shasta, or the deep forests of the Pacific Northwest, but these cases show the same kind of silence. Searchers come in. Dogs are used. Helicopters fly overhead. Volunteers walk the terrain. And still, the land gives back almost nothing. Maybe these people were simply lost. Maybe the weather, altitude, age, fear, or injury played a role. But maybe the most disturbing part is that every explanation seems to leave one piece out. Why did the children not answer? Why did Melvin's trail stop? Why was Emma not found near the road? Why did Anne vanish with no sign of struggle and no final trace? By the end of this chapter, one thing becomes clear. In New Mexico, the mystery is not just that people disappeared. The mystery is how they disappeared so completely. And sometimes, the wilderness does not need to hide a person forever. It only needs to erase just enough evidence that no one can ever prove what really happened.